Last stop standing. Friendly's victorious. Hostiles eliminated.
Clutching is a bit of a golden chalice in the Siege community. People value it incredibly highly. The ability to pull off a clutch is something that is held up with a hell of a lot of esteem, and it's understandable. It's not an easy thing to pull off, and it's really, really interesting to watch. But I have to admit, there's a few too many people who have an attitude where they decide in advance of a clutch situation whether or not the player who's involved is actually going to succeed. And that's not fair. But that's only one element of it. Obviously the technical element does come in. You need to be able to aim well, you need to have some game sense, but there's a load of different things that contribute to how each individual player is able to clutch and what their ability is going to be. In this video I'm going to go over these things, and I'm going to hopefully try and explain to you that it's not necessarily just about your technical aim and your skill, but it's also about the attitude that you display towards the players in those situations that makes a difference to your own ability and your friendly's abilities to actually pull off the clutch. So one of the things I see quite a lot in Siege is that players will get on and they'll see, let's say, a 1 versus 2. Now 1 versus 2 is a situation that's usually winnable. It's definitely more difficult than the 1v1, although the pressure might not actually be quite as high. But generally speaking, you don't get the kind of negativity you get from anything that's above 3 people. In a 1v3 and above, straight away you have 2 judgment calls, and I see this all the time. You have the player that's expected to pull it off, who regularly carries games or regularly has successful games, and they are the ones that are in there and have total radio silence over the comms, out with helpful calls. They're the ones who are allowed to focus because their teammates aren't clouding up all of the communications with, oh, we shouldn't have lost this round, oh, what a waste, oh, we did this and this and this and this and this. If this is you, stop, because you're hampering your teammates' ability to actually pull it off. Yeah, maybe they don't have a KD above 1.0. Maybe they're not sick every time they play. Maybe they do end up running into these situations and not succeeding, but there is no reason why you should write them off to the point where you're impeding their experience and crapping on their enjoyment of the game and just making them feel totally undervalued by basically turning around to them and saying, you are not going to get this, you will fail. Attitude is a huge part of it. If you can boost your teammates by giving them calls, by showing faith, they will hopefully be able to perform for you, and at the very least they'll perform better than they would if you were to turn around and practically outright tell them they've lost this situation. If you improve your own attitude, then hopefully you'll improve your team's attitude, and at the end of the day, in a ranked situation, the most coordinated and cool-headed team will usually win out over a team that tilts and ruins its own players' confidence by complaining and by trying to act as though they don't have the skill to pull off a scenario. The other elements involved in a clutch are a little bit different, and it really depends on what the clutch actually consists of. So there's different scenarios that you'll encounter. You have ones when you're attacking, where the defenders will all decide to start hopping out and they'll get greedy. These are ones that can go one of 2 ways. On certain maps where you're in quite close proximity to those run-out points, you're going to be vulnerable and you might struggle because they'll be able to run out and just overwhelm you. However, if you're on a bigger map that offers cover to you, this could actually be the best scenario for the attacker in a clutch situation, because you can just sit in cover, use the fact that you know where they're jumping out from to your advantage, slap that ACOG on the gun and just pick away at them until there's only a couple left. And that's going to end one of 2 ways. Those 2 are going to make the smart decision and they're going to stay inside, or they're going to make the wrong decision and they're going to follow in the footsteps of their teammates, in which case you should be able to polish them off. Clutch secured. Easy. Other attacker scenarios are ones where they make the smart decision from the start And you maybe have one or two players who are going for peaks or being a little bit more aggressive, but they're not doing anything stupid. And they're making it difficult for you because they're not presenting themselves as easy targets and running out to you. So what you need to do in that situation is you need to think, you need to calm down, you need to assess what's been opened, what are my entry options, how many are left, who are they. Once you've got all that information down, you know where you can actually attack from, what kind of pushes you can do, what kind of gadgets and opposition you're going to be facing. Do they have a pulse? Are they going to know where you're coming from? Do they have a lesion? Are you going to end up having to stick a mine in your leg if you're going to make a certain push? Or all these different things that will add up and will just make your experience a little bit easier. Knowledge is absolute power in Siege. And past that point, the only thing you can do is use your knowledge, use a headset, very important, you need to have that 3D audio, and just take your time. Think about what you're going to do. Assess the situation, make a plan, and then carry the plan out. Use your utility. So many players I see on attacking teams will not use their utility. Zofia players who are ending the round still with 2 shots in both chambers of their lifeline launcher. That should not be happening. Use your utility. Why would you pick an operator if you're not going to use what they have available to them? Because it's the difference between a team that wins and a team that loses. Now when you're defending, as you saw at the very start of this video, sometimes you'll get a similar scenario to the defender run out, but obviously instead it's for attackers. Now they'll approach this kind of situation in one of 2 ways. They will either buffer, like they did in that one, or they'll coordinate. Buffering is what I call that kind of situation where they're all going in one at a time and lining you up in such a way where you can actually pick them off the way that I did. Kill, reposition, kill, reposition, kill, reposition. And all you need to do is listen, because they have limited entry points. There's only so many places they can come through, and usually they're only the size of a door or a breach. A door is quite a small place, and their body's going to fill that space. So the chances of you winning a firefight are usually quite high, as long as you're aware. And the wall, slightly more difficult because there's more space for them to manoeuvre in, but it's a similar situation. They're moving in a tight space. You have the entire room to your advantage. So use cover, be liquid, and don't be afraid to leave the site if you need to. You can rotate. You don't have to sit there and wait for them to come. You can move and you can come to them, or if you're going to be safer to move off and then try and retake, they might not even notice that you've disappeared. And so the knowledge is there to your advantage because they're not aware and they're still thinking, maybe not pushing just now, maybe a bit dangerous because that person's still on site, but they don't necessarily know that for sure. The other one is when they coordinate. And if they coordinate, it's going to be difficult because they'll push different angles simultaneously. And that's when you need a bit of luck and you need a bit of cover knowledge. So be aware of your positioning. How exposed are you? Are you exposed to the right? Are you exposed to the left? If you stand here and peek a doorway like this, are you going to be exposed to the window behind you that someone else could be pushing from? Or are you in a better position where you're only exposed to the one place that you're actually actively contesting with gunfire? Think about these things and just be careful, but don't be disheartened. Clutching is not easy to do. In its very nature, 1 versus 5 is not the way the game is supposed to be played. It's 5 versus 5 because 5 players are going to go up against another 5 players in a balanced contest, and numbers advantage is huge. That's why 1 pick or 2 picks in Pro League is seen as such a major disadvantage. The team straight away needs to be on edge and they need to start adjusting their tactics because 1 person being gone can be the difference between winning and losing. And it doesn't even have to be a frag fest. It could just be a case of playing the objective and winning because of it. And that's another thing. If you're attacking and you're in that clutch situation, play the objective. If you can, just plant the diffuser and hope for the best. Use your initiative and use the objective to your advantage. You can expedite the round by trying to focus on the objective. A lot of the time when you're the last man on an attacking round, the defenders will start to roam. They'll leave site unprotected. That's when you swoop in, you take advantage of the site being empty, and that's how you can secure a win easier than having to get into a straight gunfight. And if you're defending, if they're on bomb for example, the only way that they're going to be able to take the win is to either kill you or get the diffuser down. Focus on denying the diffusal plant. Because if you can do that, even if you're playing as smoking and you're in the dying seconds and you manage to get a smoke charge off when they go to plant the diffuser, if they can't get that down, you just need to hide. And their one big win condition, which is you, is now unavailable because you're hiding inside a gold vault and they're stuck in a CCTV room choking to death. Then you got the win and you didn't have to fire a single shot. There are so many different things that factor into it, but honestly the biggest thing is just being composed, looking back on what you've done, trying to determine, did I make a mistake here? Or was I just overwhelmed by the competition? Because it happens. It's natural. It's just a learning process like everything in Siege. It's not an exact science. So just do what you can, try your best, remember your failures, and above all else, remember the successes. Because it's big. Your friends will remember them. And if your friend does pull something off like that, give them a boost. Because it can be the difference between them deciding that Siege just isn't for me anymore, and deciding, actually, I'm starting to remember why I really enjoyed this game in the first place. Do svidania, everybody. Bye-bye.